There are more wealthy men and women in America than in any other country, and the number is growing at a steady pace. According to the IRS, there are more than 1.4 million millionaires in the U.S., more than 80% of whom have made their money starting with nothing. By sometime in the 1990s, 1 out of every 100 families will have a net worth in excess of $1 million. Of the 205 billionaires in the world identified by Fortune magazine, 60 of these billionaires are Americans, and many of them are first-generation self-made billionaires. According to the research done by Dr. Thomas Stanley at the University of Georgia, covering a period of more than 15 years, between 50,000 and 100,000 men and women become millionaires every year, and most wealthy people are getting wealthier as the years pass. Now, here are a couple of questions for you. First, do you sincerely want to be rich? Because if you do, it also means that you must be willing to pay the price in terms of effort and sacrifice for a long time, probably more than 20 years, in order to achieve it. If you're not willing to pay this kind of a price, then you don't really want to be rich. You're merely entertaining yourself with a fantasy that's common to the great majority of men and women. The second question is this: why aren't you rich already? If you sincerely want to be rich, why aren't you? What is stopping you? Is it the height of your income, or is it the rate of your spending? When I talked about the laws of money, I covered many of the key ideas and principles that you must apply if you want to achieve financial independence. But if you want to be rich, you have to go much further. Theoretically, it's possible for you or anyone else to become rich, to achieve a net worth in excess of $1 million during the course of your working lifetime. All you have to do is to begin saving early enough and continue it long enough, and shelter your savings from taxes as much as possible, and let it build up until it passes the magic $1 million mark. Virtually anyone can do it, and many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people are doing it right now. As a professional speaker and trainer and management consultant, and having worked with hundreds of corporations and many tens of thousands of individuals, I have met hundreds of millionaires and several billionaires. What I found out is that they're not very different from you and me, aside from the fact that they have more money and, as they say, a better class of problems. They're not any more intelligent, nor are they especially gifted. They are mostly ordinary men and women who have used their God-given abilities to an extraordinary degree in their chosen fields. They've developed themselves and their opportunities to a very high point and have done wonderful things with their financial lives. And there's nothing in this world that can stop you from joining them if you really want to. In an earlier session, I talked about the law of belief. This law simply says that your beliefs become your realities. Thoughts objectify themselves. Your thoughts held in your mind produce after their kind. What you really deeply and intensely believe tends to materialize in your experience. Your beliefs cause you to think and see and feel and behave in ways that tend to make your beliefs come true for you. Like most people, when I was in my teens, even though I came from a poor background, I had a dream of being a millionaire by the time I was 30. I've since learned that this is the American dream. Like most people, I traveled and worked and tried many things during the decade of my 20s. I switched back and forth searching for that elusive will-o'-the-wisp of financial riches. I eagerly looked for lucky breaks, and I tried various get-rich-quick schemes. I threw my heart and energy into a variety of enterprises looking for a fast way to reach that $1 million mark. Of course, like most people, which is more than 99% of the population, I didn't make it. When I was 30, I was deeply in debt, between jobs once more, and I didn't even have a high school diploma. As my 30s began, I set my goal to be a millionaire by the time I was 40. I then began to draw on my experience and to do a few things right, but the idea of achieving wealth was still just a dream. Then there came a turning point in my life. I'd been working very hard in business, still with the dream of someday becoming wealthy, when someone asked me to explain to them the qualities of self-made millionaires. I found that as I considered the question, all I could come up with were some platitudes about setting goals and working hard. This awareness of my own ignorance on the subject of wealth led me to begin studying men and women who had started from nothing and who had achieved financial independence. And here is where the law of belief came to work for me. It can do the same for you. I found that there was an enormous amount of documentation and information available on the rich. Apparently, the subject had fascinated many people before me. This is when my beliefs began to grow. Think about it. If you read one book about one person who had started from pretty much the same place you did and had become wealthy because of doing certain things in a certain way, you would develop a very small belief that it might be possible for you. If you then went on to read about 10 or 100 or 1,000 or tens of thousands of men and women who had started with very little and had worked their way up to positions of wealth and prestige, your belief, just like mine did, would begin to grow and deepen and intensify to the point where you could become absolutely convinced that you too had the capacity to achieve whatever financial goals you set for yourself. As I began studying wealthy Americans, and especially self-made millionaires, not only did I learn the cause and effect relationships, the things that they'd done to get where they were, but I also began to develop the belief that it was possible for me as well. My intensity of belief activated the law of attraction within me and began drawing into my life people and circumstances and ideas and resources that began to move me toward my financial goals and to move them toward me. All of the other laws of success and achievement that I've talked about began to work on my behalf. In just a few years, I was able to go from being broke to being financially independent. As I began sharing these ideas with others, they began to go from rags to riches as well. On a television show recently, several audience participants stood up and told their stories about what they'd accomplished after listening to my tapes. One woman who was having serious problems in her life quit drinking, joined Alcoholics Anonymous, left a bad relationship, lost 40 pounds, and tripled her annual income to more than $100,000, all in the space of less than 1 year. Another woman and her husband increased their net worth 30 times in 2 years. A third gentleman from Pakistan was broke and sleeping on the ground when someone let him listen to some of my audio cassettes. Within 4 years, he was a millionaire and the owner of 2 companies. All over the country, men and women by the hundreds and thousands have found that by applying some of these principles, they can make more progress in a couple of years than they might have made in an entire lifetime of hard work. There are a series of laws that apply to wealth creation, which you can use to achieve your financial goals. Every wealthy person lives his life in harmony with these laws, and every person suffering financial problems is breaking one or more of these laws and trying to get away with it. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work that way. The first law of wealth creation is the law of creative emulation. It says the key to achieving wealth is to study and emulate those who have already acquired it before you. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Use proven success methods. The first part of this law says that what one person has done, others can do as well. Abraham Lincoln once said that some become wealthy is a sign to others that they may also become wealthy. For every activity in life, it's commonly understood that you copy the people who have already mastered the subject before you attempt to add your own variations or wrinkles to it. The second part of the law of creative emulation says that if you ask the experts for advice, they'll give it to you. Business philosopher Jim Rohn says, poor people should take rich people out to lunch and pay the bill. Taking a wealthy, successful person out to lunch and asking him or her for advice or guidance on what you can do and how you can do it is the cheapest investment you can ever make. And what I've found is that winners will always help others to win. Successful people will always take time out of their busy schedules to help other people to be successful. The third part of the law of creative emulation says that you become what you most admire. One of the things that we know about wealthy men and women is that they place an extremely high value on the acquisition of material goods, and they very much admire and look up to other men and women who've acquired them as well. Sometimes People delude themselves by saying silly things like, well, I'd rather be happy than rich. They seem to think that people who make a lot of money are not particularly virtuous or happy. Well, I have news for you. The research has been done, and the results are in. The fact is that the wealthy are very, very happy. They may have problems and difficulties in their lives, but they are happier and healthier more of the time than people are who worry about money every single day. Many people have been misled into believing that people only achieve financial success by engaging in activities that are somehow illicit and unacceptable. This is disproven by the facts. More than 99% of all the men and women who've achieved wealth have done it by utilizing their talents and abilities to the maximum in the service of other people. The biggest fortunes in America have been built in fields like retail sales and food production and distribution, gasoline and oil distribution, real estate development, and transportation of people and goods and services. Many huge fortunes come from the development of media outlets like newspapers and television and radio stations. One of the best ways to become wealthy is summarized in the old saying, if you want to dine with the classes, you have to sell to the masses. The second law of wealth creation is the law of desire, which states that the motivation to acquire riches is an intense, burning desire for financial success. In order to achieve anything, you must be highly motivated, and all motivation requires a motive. The more powerful your motivation, the more likely it is that you will persist in the face of all obstacles and disappointments toward attaining your objective. The first part of the law of desire says that if you want it badly enough, no one will be able to convince you that it's not possible. Perhaps the greatest negative influence in your life will be the people around you, many of them very well-meaning, but who will criticize and ridicule you for wanting to achieve so much above the ordinary. They'll point out every weakness and shortcoming in your plans and dreams. But if your desire is intense enough, you will be able to rise above them and carry on regardless. The second part of the law of desire says that desire is only expressed in your actions. It's not what you say, but what you do that counts. As I said before, everybody has the same dreams and desires, but very few people are taking actions consistent with them. You can tell if you really believe in your ability to become wealthy by the things that you do every single day. The wonderful thing is that when you take actions consistent with your desires, the actions themselves reinforce your belief that your desires are achievable. You can actually build yourself into an unstoppable, wealth-creating human machine by acting as if you already were one. The third part of the law of desire says that the more often you affirm your goal and visualize it as a reality, the more intense your desire will be. The third law of wealth creation is the law of purpose. To quote Napoleon Hill, it says that definiteness of purpose is the starting point of all riches. Definiteness of purpose means establishing a clear, well-defined goal of financial achievement for yourself, supported by a plan and backed by action. Setting your goal of wealth creation as your major definite purpose in life is essential to your turning it into a reality. The first part of the law of purpose says that a person with a clear purpose will make progress on the roughest road. If you know exactly where you're going, you will find a way to get there. It doesn't matter how difficult the way or how many obstacles you face. As long as your goal is clear, you will find a way under, over, or around anything that blocks your path. Now here's an exercise that will start you on your way. Take a pad of paper and write down some clear financial goals for yourself, and then make a plan that extends out over the next 3 to 5 years. Draw up a list of everything you can think of that you can do to begin your forward movement. Organize the list in terms of priorities and begin to work on the most important thing that appears to you. Decide how much you want to earn each year, how much you plan to save and invest of what you earn, and how much you want to be worth when you retire, and how much of an annual return you want to earn on your accumulated savings. The more definite you are, the more likely it is that these numbers will become your reality. The second part of the law of purpose says that The primary reasons why people don't become rich are, first, it never occurs to them, and second, they never decide to. The primary reason that people don't become rich, as I discussed in my audio program, Getting Rich in America, is that it never occurs to them. They never even think about it. So be careful with whom you associate on a regular basis. You will inevitably adopt the mannerisms, values, attitudes, and behaviors of the people with whom you spend the most time. Even if it does occur to you that it would be nice to be wealthy, the second major obstacle to financial success in America is that most people never make a decision to accomplish it. They wish and hope and pray and buy lottery tickets, but they never make a total 100% commitment to paying the price of success in advance so that they can enjoy it in the future. There are some beautiful words attributed to the German philosopher Wolfgang von Goethe, but which were written by the production manager in the introduction to his stage play, Faust. They go like this. Are you in earnest? Seek this very minute. Whatever you can do or dream you can, begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Just begin, and the mind grows heated. Continue, and the task will be completed. The fourth law of wealth creation is the law of enrichment, which says that all lasting wealth comes from enriching others in some way, from adding value and retaining part of it. This law says that anyone who enriches others must themselves be enriched. When you realize that the world is full of men and women driven by expediency to get the very most for the very least of the security, comfort, leisure, love, respect, and fulfillment that they want, you realize that there are unlimited opportunities for you to enrich the lives of others in some way. All you have to do is find your own particular way and then manage your affairs so that you keep a small part of the value that you've added to the life and work of other people. The law of enrichment goes on to say that your current income is a measure of how much you are currently enriching the lives of others. You are paid not what you want, but only what you deserve. You're earning today exactly what you're worth, not a penny more, not a penny less. What you're being paid at this moment represents exactly how much value your efforts represent in the lives of the people who use what you produce. And you can only increase the amount that you're getting by increasing the amount that you're giving. The fifth law of wealth creation is the law of entrepreneurship, which says that more people become wealthy by starting and building their own successful businesses than by all other ways combined. Fully 74% of self-made millionaires in the United States achieved their wealth by starting a business enterprise of some kind and building it up, usually very slowly, so that it not only yielded them a good living, but generated enough excess revenue to eventually make them wealthy. The first part of the law of entrepreneurship simply says, find a need and fill it. This has been the essence of all large and small business success. Look around you, find a need that people have, and find a way to fill it in a cost-effective manner. The second part of the law of entrepreneurship says that wherever there are needs unmet or problems unsolved, there are opportunities to create wealth. The third part of the law of entrepreneurship says that most fortunes come from selling established products or services in established markets to established customers and doing it just a little bit better. All a product or service has to be is 10% newer or better to build a business and to start a fortune. The converse of this principle of entrepreneurship is that it's very risky to start off with a new, unproven, or untried product or service. For example, the industry that's produced more self-made millionaires than any other single industry is the dry cleaning business. This is because dry cleaning is an established service need that's used regularly, it's fairly profitable, and it's required by almost everyone. It isn't that it's not possible to make money with a brand new product or service, but it's a little bit like hoping for a miracle. Miracles do happen, but you can't depend upon them. More people lose their shirts and their hopes by trying to sell something brand new in a brand new market than by any other way. The sixth law of wealth creation is the law of bootstrapping. This law states that entrepreneurs who start with too little capital are usually more successful than those who start with too much. You've probably heard it said that most businesses fail because they don't have enough capital. They run out of money. The fact of the matter is that probably more businesses fail because they start off with too much money rather than too little. The reason for this is simple. The most valuable thing an entrepreneur can bring to a new business idea is energy and imagination. When you have very little money, you have to use your intelligence and your efforts as a substitute for it. You don't have the luxury of using money to smooth out the bumps or to put a cushion under you. When you're down to your last dollar, or if you're starting off with virtually no money at all, you start to think fast very early. You develop street smarts. You learn how to think on your feet and to take action quickly. Some of the smartest and most successful business people have used bootstrapping as the key method of achieving their goals. Many people hold back from starting a business because they're convinced that they need a lot of money. When they go to a bank, they're turned down. The fact is that banks don't lend money for business startups. Banks are in the business of making good loans. That is, loans to people who can back the money that they are borrowing with $2, $3, $4, or $5 for every $1 they're asking the bank to loan. If you don't have that, the bank won't even talk to you. As for venture capitalists, fully 99% of all proposals put into the hands of venture capitalists are turned down. And of the 1% that venture capitalists will back, many of them are failures as well. Most businesses are built up by bootstrapping and by what is called love money. Love money is money that people lend to you or give to you because they love you. Most entrepreneurs finance their own startups, or they finance their startups with money from their parents or members of their family or their friends. This is the most common way of getting a business going in America today. The first part of the law of bootstrapping is, as I mentioned earlier, the most important resources in a new business are energy and imagination. If you have enough energy and imagination, you will ultimately be successful, no matter what happens in the short term. On the other hand, if you lack energy and imagination, you can go through any amount of money and you'll ultimately fail. So the sooner you develop your street smarts, and that depends upon you having very little money to start with, the faster you'll be more successful. The second part of this law says that skill, knowledge, and experience develop in inverse proportion to the amount of capital available. The less capital you have, the smarter you get, and the more likely you are to succeed. The seventh law of wealth creation is the law of courage, which says that your willingness to risk failure and disappointment is a measure of your desire to be rich. The first part of the law of courage says that no guts, no glory. You've got to be willing to stick your neck out if you want to get your head above the crowd. You have to go out on a limb if you want to get ahead, because that's where the fruit of life is. The second part of the law of courage says that there is nothing to fear but fear itself. This was first said by President Franklin D. Roosevelt during the Great Depression, and it's just as true today. One of the best ways for you to deal with fear is to ask yourself, what's the worst possible thing that can possibly happen? Most of your fear comes from not identifying the worst possible consequences of your situation. Once you've clearly defined what might happen, you can then do everything to make sure that it doesn't occur. The third part of the law of courage says simply, do the thing you fear, and the death of fear is certain. Your ability to confront the things you fear, to face them, and to move ahead in spite of your fears is the way you develop the courage that's essential to long-term success. Dare to go forward. Winston Churchill once said, courage is rightly considered the foremost of the virtues, for upon it all others depend. This is equally true for you and for your desire to become wealthy. The eighth law of wealth creation is the law of risk. This law simply says that there is a direct relationship between the level of risk and the likelihood of loss. People who become wealthy are extremely astute at assessing the level of risk in every situation they deal with. They carefully analyze the ratio of risk to return before deciding to invest their time or money at all. You begin your analysis of risk by realizing that a perfectly safe investment in a money market or savings account can yield you 7 to 8% interest. If you're going to invest your time and money, you must be assured of a return that is substantially higher than that to compensate you for the possibility that you'll lose all or part of your money. When you assess the risk, include all the possible costs. Include your labor at your desired hourly rate as an investment as well. Many entrepreneurs think they're doing well because they don't count their own labor as a cost of doing business. You count your own labor by determining how much you would be paid if you went to work for another company and counting that as a cost of your doing business. You also take the money that you have tied up in the business and calculate what you'd earn on it at a safe rate of return. That is also a cost. It's called an opportunity cost of money, which, combined with your opportunity cost of labor, will give you the real amount of your investment and your risk. The first part of the law of risk comes from Malcolm Forbes, who said, "If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is." One of the greatest wastes of time and life, let alone money, is the pursuit of get-rich-quick schemes which seem to come down the pipeline with astonishing regularity. The only real way to get rich dependably is to get rich slowly. It's hard work, and it takes a long time to accumulate wealth, but you're foolish to seek for faster and easier ways. The second part of the law of risk says that success in wealth creation is the result of avoiding risk in the pursuit of profit. The fact is that entrepreneurs are not risk-takers, as is commonly believed. Rather, successful entrepreneurs are risk avoiders. They're very skillful at sidestepping and avoiding risk in the pursuit of adding value and earning profits. It's only to the degree to which you avoid the risks inherent in any economic activity that you become wealthy. The third part of the law of risk says that entrepreneurs take calculated risks, but they are not gamblers. Extensive research on the psychology and patterns of behavior of successful entrepreneurs shows that because they work hard for their money, they have no desire to gamble it away. Entrepreneurs accept that there's a certain amount of risk in anything they do. However, they believe that they can tip the scales to their own advantage. They can moderate the risk by adding their knowledge, skills, and ability to the equation. They are willing to take gambles only when they can personally have an effect on the outcome. You seldom see entrepreneurs in the gambling resorts, and you seldom find them trading in the stock market. If they're in the stock market at all, they have investment portfolios where they store their excess funds for the long term. Their funds are carefully allocated among blue-chip stocks and are supervised by professional money managers. If you ask the average self-made millionaire how the stock market did today, he will tell you quite frankly that he doesn't know. They don't follow the stock market because they're not interested in day-to-day fluctuations. The ninth law of wealth creation is called the law of undue optimism, and it's essential for both entrepreneurship and the creation of wealth. It says, an unwarranted expectancy of success can lead to both the success and failure of a new business venture. Excess optimism is absolutely essential for a person to embark on a new business adventure of any kind. Without undue optimism, without an extremely positive feeling that you'll be successful, you'll have a tendency to play it too safe, as most people do. In order to get started in the first place, you need an attitude of hopefulness and positive expectancy that is much higher than the average. However, this same undue optimism can lead to self-delusion and unreal expectations. So you need to temper your optimism with reality. You need to examine every aspect of the business before you commit your resources to it. You need to seek out the advice of other people who may not be as positive towards your idea as you are, and consider what they have to say carefully before you act. The first part of this law says that the true time period for you to break even will be 3 times longer than your best estimate. Once you've written out your business plan, you should triple your very best estimate of your break-even point and make sure that you have the resources to continue operating that long. Practice frugality at all times and conserve your cash above all else when starting on any new venture. The second part of the law of undue optimism is Whatever your budget is for your venture, it will cost you twice as much as you expect. So be conservative in projecting your sales and revenues, and be liberal, even excessive, in estimating your costs. Always calculate your expenses on the outside, at the highest you can imagine, and when you have them all added up, then add another 20% as a fudge factor to get a more realistic picture of what your financial costs are likely to be. If you exceed your financial results and you do better than you expect, that's wonderful. But practice caution and pessimism in your financial projections to start with. The third part of the law of undue optimism is called Murphy's Law, which you've heard of before. It says, whatever can go wrong will go wrong. An addition to this law says that of all the possible things that can go wrong, the worst possible thing will go wrong at the worst possible time, and it will cost you the greatest amount of money. People who start their own businesses are convinced, at least initially, that they're going to violate these laws and succeed in spite of them. People who succeed, however, are those who conform to these laws and who have stopped trying to beat them. The 10th law of wealth creation is the law of persistence. It says that if you persist long enough, you must inevitably be successful. Persistence is to the quality of man as carbon is to steel. Your persistence is your measure of your belief in yourself. Persistence is your self-discipline in action. It's your ability to persist that is often your most valuable asset. The first part of the law of persistence says that the entire process of wealth creation is just one important lesson after another. If ever you feel that you've reached the point where you know everything that you need to know, in no time at all you're going to be blindsided by a completely new and unexpected series of problems and difficulties. Mark my words. The second part of the law of persistence says that you stay in business and you achieve success as long as you continue to earn enough money to pay for your mistakes. The freedom to fail is what gives you the opportunity to succeed. You are learning all the time. When you have experiences, either positive or negative, you will learn from them, and what you learn will enable you to win in the end. By the law of accumulation, which I talked about in an earlier session, your ultimate success will be an accumulation of hundreds and even thousands of small actions on your part that gradually add up to a form of critical mass that enables you to create and keep the wealth for which you're working. Perhaps the most important thing you can do is to take time every day to think about your goals and to reflect quietly on the things that you've done right and the things that you would do differently in the future. Remember, action without thinking is the cause of every failure. Financial wealth is within your grasp. Hundreds of thousands of men and women have acquired it in the past, and you can acquire it in the future if you do the same things they did and if you learn the same lessons. The only real limitation on your potential is the level of your desire and the strength of your willingness to persist in the face of adversity. When you set a clear goal, develop a written plan, put your plan into action, and back your actions with determination and perseverance, you must and will eventually be successful. You will become one of the leading men or women of your generation.